Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked what you thought of Episode 6 of Skeleton Crew. I'll also then be reading and responding to some of the comments that were left on the poll. And so let's get right to it, where we'll see that 27% of people said this was a good episode or they enjoyed it. 11% said it was okay or they enjoyed it for the most part. 1% then said it was bad or they didn't like it. And 60% said, I'm not watching the show. Which, though, no, not a good number if you're someone maybe kind of rooting for the show to get good viewership, it is coming down. That is the smallest percentage of people not watching an episode that we've had on one of these polls. It has ranged from 63 to 66%. Now, that could be because people are actually starting to tune in. It could be that the people who have been doing the poll and saying they're not watching it are no longer participating in the poll. We can't be 100% sure what has caused the discrepancy, but it does seem like good news. And there are a lot of comments, not a lot, but there are some from people saying I started to watch the show or I'm going to give it a chance once it's done. So this does seem to be a good positive number if, again, you're someone enjoying the show and want to see it do well, to potentially get more seasons or to potentially send a message to Disney and Lucasfilm that, hey, you finally made some decent Star Wars. And yes, we now will, for the record, take away the 60% not watching it to see how the people who are watching felt about the episode. And again, it's not to dismiss the 60%, they are the majority. But turns out 69% said this was a good episode that they enjoyed. 28% said it was okay for the most part. And then there was about 3% who said they didn't like this episode or did not enjoy it. And this is pretty average for the show thus far. This isn't the highest rated one. That was last week's episode, nor is it the lowest rated one. I think that was the 4th episode. But it is another very strong showing, no matter how you want to look at it, by those who did watch it. Alright, and now we move on to some comments, but not before once again just saying thank you to everybody who votes and comments and watches these or many of my videos across both the channels, and a huge thank you to those who support the channels over on Patreon. Thank you so much for that. And now we will once again kick it off with the top rated comment on the poll, which this time came to us from Govant, who said, my 4-year-old son watched this episode with me, his first time seeing the show, though not his first time seeing Star Wars. As soon as it ended, he turned to me and said, can we watch it again? Instead, I asked him if he wanted to start with the first episode. He said yes. We then watched the first 2 episodes, and he was glued to the screen the whole time, asking questions and enjoying it. For me, this may not have been the best episode of the season, but it was the best episode for the memory it formed with my son. And that is awesome to hear, not just for you. I am so glad you have something to share with your son, especially something Star Wars. But it's good for Star Wars. It's good to know, and this is not the only comment I have read like this either from this episode or previous episodes. But it's good to know that Star Wars maybe has finally made something that does appeal to the younger audience. I think one of the biggest issues Disney has had, and they've had many, don't get me wrong, but one of the biggest ones is I don't really think they're getting that younger generation with pretty much anything they've been doing. As I've said before, Marvel was this generation's or previous generations or somewhere in between the two, but Marvel was their kind of Star Wars, right? It was that one thing that they all kind of watched and got into, and Star Wars, in large part because no, it hasn't exactly been the best thing ever, has been left by the wayside by them. I don't see a ton of younger people out there talking Star Wars, wearing Star Wars merchandise or whatever it might be. And I know it's anecdotal. It's just my experience from reading comments and what I see in the world and talking to people I know. I don't know with 100% certainty that Star Wars isn't the thing with the younger crowd. But again, I've heard from a lot of parents. I've heard from teachers. I talk to people about Star Wars or people who have kids. And in general, that has been a big problem. They're just not watching it. They don't care about it. And at the same time, you're kind of hemorrhaging your long-term fans, your older fans, and thus Star Wars is in the position it's in. And so, again, as someone who always roots for Star Wars, it's nice to see a show that adults are interested in and enjoying for the most part, and one that kids can get into as well. This is, in many ways, you could argue, the kind of perfect Star Wars show. At least in terms of it being kind of this all ages thing that brings in that younger crowd and keeps the older crowd happy and watching. Alright, and kind of going along with what I was saying there, we have this comment from Taffy Not Manzo, I think I'm saying that right, who said, the 60% says all you need to know. No one cares about Disney Star Wars anymore. well, not enough of the budgets of these shows, there's no profit. And yeah, that 60% does say a lot, but you need to look a little bit closer, I think, to try to figure out the whole story. And I tried to do that with my previous poll question, the one that kind of asked if you're watching Skeleton Crew, and if you aren't, is it because you're never going to watch it, or would you potentially give it a chance? And on that poll, we ended up with 60% of people who said they weren't watching it, and 33 of them said, or 33% said, I'm never going to watch the show or have zero interest in it, while 27% said they'd potentially give it a chance. So yeah, the 60% not watching, that's not good, and 1/3 of Star Wars fans who watch a Star Wars channel and take part in my polls not watching a Star Wars show or not wanting to, no, that is not good. And as I said in the video covering that poll, Disney is reaping what they sowed. It is their fault people don't want to watch Star Wars. I am not in any way trying to defend Disney by saying that this is a good show. I tried to explain that in that video, so I'll move on and say that no, the 60% not watching is not the whole story. It is a big part of the story. But a lot of them will give this show a chance. A lot of them each and every week in the comments are saying they're giving it a try and now watching. And there are also some that just aren't interested in this particular show that might not be done with Star Wars altogether, but will never give Skeleton Crew a chance because it just doesn't look like it is something they would enjoy or for them, or they think it is maybe a little too kid-friendly, if you will. Anyway, before I keep rambling, yes, the 60% does say a lot, but it doesn't say it all. There is a good chunk of those 60% that potentially would give this show or will give this show a chance if the reviews continue to be good. And then there's some that just won't. And again, that's not anybody's fault but Disney's. Okay, and let's move on from that. And we have a question now from Think Again, who said, I saw a few people calling it filler, but this episode is far from it. It actually progresses the plot and gives good character development for the kids. Still wish it was longer. And that is kind of my biggest complaint about the show, or about several of the episodes now, that they are on the short side, which in and of itself doesn't make it bad. I want to be very clear. I don't think the show is bad because it had a 25-minute episode. The episode was, you could say, as precisely as long as it needed to be. It did work at 25 minutes. I just think you can sometimes put a little more into the episodes, make the story a little more robust per episode, if that makes sense. Again, it doesn't make the episode bad. It doesn't make the show itself bad. It's just something that I would prefer. I feel like there is a lot more that could be explored in each and every episode, be that a little more world building, which, yes, the show has done a good job with the world building, don't get me wrong. Or maybe a little more overall plot, a little more plot within the episode itself. I just think the show could be a little better. That's not calling it bad by any stretch. I am enjoying it. I'm just saying, in this day and age where the standard has kind of become 45-minute episodes, if not longer. I mean, a lot of shows do hour-long episodes each and every week, and I'm not saying it needs to do that. But if you really want the show to compete with other streaming services, to feel like it is on par with some of these other shows, I think it being short is a hindrance to it. I think that kind of annoys people. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I've seen a few other people saying, yeah, it feels too short. Again, it's not a deal breaker. It doesn't make it bad. I just feel like there could be so much more there. It could be even better. Not that it is anyway bad because it's too short. Alright, and kind of related to that one, we have a comment here from Zach Hawker, who said, it did what episode 4 did, but better. They're not stuck in some extravagant event happening around them that feels forced while they learn lessons. They just need to get back to their ship, which is a much better setting for character development, because we don't need to ask questions about what's happening around them. It's a shame the show came out when it did. I think if it came out after Mando Season 1 and 2, it would be highly praised, a highly praised gem that probably everyone would have watched. Damn you, Acolyte. And first of all, yeah, I do think there is some, as we have come to call it in the fandom, some soloing, or it is being soloed to some degree, which of course refers to how Solo did so poorly after The Last Jedi. I do think there are some people who watched The Acolyte and will not watch this because of that show. I don't know how many, but certainly some. I have seen the comments from those people as well. Either way, and even though, yes, I thought the episode could have been a bit longer, I did think this was better than episode 4, where, as you point out, they kind of get put in this crazy battle situation. And I'm not saying it was a bad episode. I like episode 4, but it just felt very forced. It felt very rushed. It felt very contrived. Things happened because we needed the characters to grow, not because the characters were actually making them happen, which is the huge difference in this episode. all the events happen because of character conflict. And I'm not saying you can't ever have it where outside influences are impacting the characters and causing the story, don't get me wrong. But this felt more genuine because it came entirely from the characters and how they felt and what they wanted to do or what they thought they should do and the conflict that arose between them because of that. And it worked extremely well. Again, I really liked this episode. I just wish they could be a little bit longer. Alright, and now on to this comment from Butcher Pete, who said, I really liked this one. KB's line, I bet you thought it would be more exciting to save someone's life, is such a great moment. Kids grow up, just like Wim, thinking they'll do huge, heroic things, and suddenly when they have to do them, it doesn't feel very heroic and exciting. It's scary, it's real, it's not what you're expecting. I loved that. And I agree, I thought there was some really good life lessons, especially, again, for the younger viewers. Not that older viewers can't take the same thing away from them. But I thought there were some very fantastic life lessons in this episode, done very well. Not too on the nose, not where they felt like a after-school special for those old enough to remember those. They felt more organic, and yeah, that is a great lesson, that being a hero doesn't mean, and I think I said this in my review, it doesn't mean necessarily putting a cape on and fighting a supervillain or picking up a lightsaber and saving the day that way. Sometimes it is the little things that make you a hero, and I mean very little things. Sometimes you can be a hero to just one individual, and it is something very small, and you make their day, or you somehow save them, and you never even realize that you do. You just were friendly to somebody who needed it in the moment, and it made all the difference in the world. And that's what KB's line was basically saying, that, yeah, you think it's going to be exciting when you're a kid. You always imagine yourself being the hero who saves the world, but sometimes you're the hero who just saves one other person, and it's still a pretty big deal, especially to that one other person. All right, and our final question comes to us from Violator, who said, or asked, where are the Nielsen ratings? By the way, seems a bit late. And the Nielsen ratings for the first 2 episodes should be out this Thursday. I think there has been a delay, maybe because of the holidays, I'm not sure, but usually they're about 3 weeks behind, and they seem to be 4 weeks behind. But they should be out this week, which will give us a glimpse into how those first 2 episodes did. There have been numbers given to us by other sites that monitor streaming services, and it hasn't made their top 10s. We'll see if that is the case with Nielsen this week, and maybe it'll be surprising, and it'll be in there, and maybe it won't be. We shall see soon enough. Either way, though, that is all I have for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you thought of this latest episode of Skeleton Crew. Tell me what you think is going to happen in the final 2 episodes as we approach the finale. Or tell me whatever you want about the show, or ask a question for a future lightning response video where you leave a comment saying, hey Thor, and then ask your question. Whatever you choose to do, though, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.